The False Dawn of Palestinian Recognition was the title of the article written by my guest, Professor Joseph Liow, in Channel News Asia. On Channel News Asia's site, it was published on the 23rd of September, and that will be the topic of discussion today. Welcome everyone to episode 135 of Teh Tarik with Walid. So I am delighted to say that I will be having my former boss, Professor Joseph Liow, on, and we will be discussing the article, but also more broadly, the issue of Palestinian recognition. Thank you so much, Prof, for doing this.
No worries, no worries.
Yes, so thank you. I think welcome to Teh Tarik with Walid. I just wanted to say that you were my boss for 8 years. I think I don't know. I think we had a decent relationship, I think.
I would like to think so too, but you never know with these things. You never know.
Yeah. So it's good. And I think you always gave me space to do my stuff. So I really wanted to put it out there first. So thank you. I appreciate everything.
Sure. It was a pleasure having you as a colleague.
Thank you. So now that the pleasantries are out of the way, so your maybe you can summarize your article and maybe your position now, whether it has shifted since whatever has happened on Palestinian recognition.
Okay. Thanks, Walid, and thanks for this opportunity. I've been watching a lot of it. Never thought that I would be actually on it, so glad to be able to join you on a very difficult topic. Yeah, in many ways. Now, on specific to recognition, I think let me start first by saying that it is of course tied to the situation in Gaza. Not only to that, because there's obviously a larger sort of historical and geographical context, political context, but the immediate trigger, of course, is Gaza. And I think what is happening in Gaza today is really, I mean, it's certainly a tragedy. But I remember the words of the former Indonesian Foreign Minister Ali Alatas, right, who was a wonderful foreign minister during the Suharto era. And I remember once he explaining his job as foreign minister to explain East Timor, what was happening in East Timor. This was before the independence, right? And he used the phrase, he found himself having to defend the indefensible. Yeah. So I think that's quite apt, if you ask me. Yeah, about how to look at the situation there. But specific to recognition, I think you referred to that piece which I wrote.
Yeah.
And I wrote it because I thought it was important for us to, as heart-wrenching as the situation in Gaza is, we need to take a step back. Yeah, I certainly told myself that I needed to take a step back and try to look at that situation really as objectively as possible. Yeah, and it's not easy. It really is not easy. But that was my motivation. And the question that I asked myself is, not just what impact would recognition have. I think most people, even those who support recognition, would agree that in terms of impact, immediate impact on the ground, you will hardly see anything, right? Sure. In fact, my concern is the reverse. That the Israelis will dig in, and I say Israelis, but what I really mean is the government of Benjamin Netanyahu, because we know that there is a big debate within Israel about how this war is being conducted. Yeah, but I essentially thought that it was important for us to try to take a step back and try to understand the context and the implications of recognition and what it means politically, legally. So beyond just the sort of emotive response. Yeah. So I think my view is quite clear on in the article and in some subsequent stuff that I've written as well. That I think if we think about recognition alone, it's not going to move the dial. In fact, if let's say under current circumstances, a Palestinian state comes into being, right? I mean, independence. I, as a political scientist, you are one as well. So we may have different views on this, but I think that the presence of at least some semblance of institutions with legitimacy is quite critical. And I think I thought about that because of Iraq. You remember, right? After the American invasion of Iraq, what did the US do? The US totally dismantled the Ba'athist state of Saddam Hussein under the misplaced assumption that they would be welcome. And an extension of their welcome was that people will be galvanized to rebuild the country. Yeah, but we know what happened, and the most vile, if I may, outcome of that was ISIS, the creation of ISIS. But a lot of things flowed from that, and I think that is a concern. And the last point I will raise is why would that be a concern? I think that if we put ourselves in the position of Israel, the Israelis, as you know, have been they're very exercised by their security concerns. Yeah, rightly or wrongly, they as a country, as a people, they've gone through quite a number of wars with their neighbors historically, and they're dealing with neighbors. I don't mean countries, although you can put Iran in that category for sure, but there's certainly groups around their neighborhood who really don't want them to be in the neighborhood. Yeah. So these things factor into the calculation as well, so to speak. So I think so broadly, I think these were some of the not I suppose assumptions, but also the ideas and the context, to my mind, that shaped how I was looking at this issue.
Okay, thank you, Prof. So basically, you are not in favor of Palestinian recognition at the moment, not because it's not the right thing to do, but because it may actually worsen, it may push Israel further into a corner.
I mean, number one,
And
it would
yeah,
push Israel further in
the
corner.
other two is there is no
Number
state, there is no
yeah,
state or institutions to hold
yeah.
arms
I'm worried
length.
about a failed state. I'm worried about the failed
Okay.
state.
All right. Okay. Thank you. So basically, your position is in line with the government's position, right?
I mean, it's my position. I suppose it's aligned. I
Right.
mean,
Okay.
the government's position, I think, is very much about changing the situation on the ground. It's very much about the need to have sort of political representation, legitimate representation on the other side. Yeah, so that I'm aligned with also. I don't think they mentioned about failed state stuff
Right.
like that. That's just from my, like I said, my own reflections about some other similar, not the same obviously, but similar context historically.
Okay. Thank you. So I guess my first question to you is, do you think what is going on is a genocide? Because if it is, there are some legal obligations, like
Yeah,
erga omnes obligations for Singapore if it does, and
yeah,
that is in the realm of
yes,
international law.
yeah.
So what is your position on that?
So as you know, the legal ruling on genocide has not been determined yet. Yeah, but I'll put it this way, it doesn't look good for Israel. I mean, looking at what is happening there. Yeah, but we haven't had that legal ruling yet. I think the Singapore government, I may be wrong, but I believe its view is we want to wait for that legal ruling because if you subscribe to international law and all that, you want to do that. Yeah, but of course we have to bear in mind, quite apart from the images that we see, that a whole string of human rights groups and bodies, they have sort of given their opinion. They've weighed in on the issue, and in some cases it's quite clear in their mind. Yeah. So yeah, I think the situation
Right.
looks pretty bad. It does look very bad.
Right. So then what would, because you say that Singapore recognizing wouldn't move the needle, right? So what what would be the responsibility of a nation like Singapore? So two responsibilities, right? One is
Mm.
the legal responsibility
Yeah.
in the face of this, but the other is also a moral responsibility. And I don't mean this because there's no morality in international politics, yes, as in we are political scientists and we
Mm.
subscribe to that. But the morality in terms of citizens thinking that I want my government to do. I feel so helpless.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
even this small thing that is not
Yeah.
gonna move, if it's not gonna move the
Yeah.
needle anyway,
Yeah.
but why not just do it? What's the problem? Why
Yeah.
will not? Why can't we do it? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I think the first thing we need to bear in mind is recognition or non-recognition is not the only thing that a government can
Sure,
do lah. It's
sure,
not as
sure.
if you
Yep.
you recognize, then you've done all you can, or you don't recognize means you're not doing anything. Yeah.
Sure.
So like those people who or those countries that have recognized, they've been criticized also for the reason that recognition is very simple, right? You need to do more, right?
Yep.
From our perspective, we certainly shouldn't. Singapore society shouldn't take the view that, oh, since we don't recognize, we are somehow we don't have to do anything about the situation, and we certainly have to do something. I think the government has been doing some things, the aid and all that sort of stuff. But I think it is also important, I feel, as an educator, that we need to educate people about the situation there. Yeah, I think what has happened is that you've got this very unfortunate outbreak of this conflict, and thanks in large part to social media, information about it has really proliferated far more quickly than knowledge and understanding. Yeah. So people start to form views, and very strong views, right, based on images they see. Yeah. And I'm not going to get into the discussion about, whether it's Hamas propaganda or Israeli propaganda or whatever it is. Yeah. But the larger point is that I think this is an occasion where I feel that we really should try to at least develop a better understanding of what is happening in the region, how that conflict came about in the first place. Why is Hamas, or why are Palestinian groups so adamant? Why are the Israelis, especially under Prime Minister Netanyahu's government, so stubborn about what they're doing? I think all this is important. It's not going to help solve the problem. Yeah, that's a separate thing. But it helps us to better understand. Yeah, so
Yep.
that we have a better appreciation of
Yeah,
the
I think
realities.
you and I are in agreement that probably nothing Singapore does, not probably, nothing Singapore does will affect the resolution of the conflict, right? But I guess for me, doing something is not really about the resolution of the conflict, but it's more about telling Singaporeans who we are as a nation and a
Mm,
society, because we did that for Russia, knowing
mm,
full well that our sanctions against Russia are minuscule and won't affect
mm,
Russia's
mm,
functioning. So why is there
mm.
that reluctance when it comes to Israel to do the same things?
I think so a lot of people do this comparison, right,
Yep.
between Russia and and Israel, the situation of Israel. I think the reason why is different, and I'm not sort of explaining or making excuses, yeah, for why we take this stand on this case and that stand on the other case. Yeah. But if you ask me, what some of the differences might be, yeah, I think there's a lot by way of history, by way of legality. I mean, legality in the sense that in the case of Russia, it was essentially a blatant undermining of the UN Charter, yeah, about the sovereignty of states. Yeah. So whatever feelings we have about Palestine and its rights, yeah, and it's certainly, so I want to emphasize again, yeah, my view about the Palestinian right for self-determination, yeah, which I think is a very legitimate cause, yeah. But currently, as we know, it is not an official member at the UN. Yeah. So in that sense, there's a major difference there as well. Yeah. So I think
But
there are.
don't you think it's a catch-22, right? Well, two things. One, Israel is not violating law in the same way that Russia is because Palestine is not a state. But Palestine is not a state because Israel doesn't want Palestine to be a state. So therefore, as long as they continue to violate one law, they can violate other laws because there is no law to violate, so to speak. Then the second thing, but it's not just about Palestine. Qatar was a clear violation of the
Yes. Yeah.
UN Charter
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So shouldn't there be sanctions at the same level? Or?
If you draw a connection like that, yes, but then you are going. It's going to be a slippery slope. Yeah, because what's going to happen is you're going to have a whole. We thought the Trump tariff wars is bad. Yeah, you're going to have a lot of states sanctioning a lot of other states for this, that, and the other reason. Yeah, so I think that sanctions, quite apart from the fact, from the sort of discussion about whether sanctions are an effective tool, I think there's, as you know, there's a debate about that. I mean, sanctions have to be used in a very. I would hope that states would be cautious about how they use sanctions. Yeah. Okay. It's not a tool that you would really, and I say this in no way belittling the situation in Palestine, but in the general terms, I think states should be careful in how they wield sanctions as a tool of coercive diplomacy, and they need to really weigh the pros and cons before they go ahead with that.
So is it fair to say, as political scientists, the only difference between Russia and Israel, because we are more, there is more interdependence with Israel than with Russia, and that's why we could take such a strong stand against Russia, even though we couch it in terms of international law and violations and so on. Because you are right I think you are right in the sense that, I mean, China, America, Saudi, there are many countries that that break international law quite regularly, right? So, but is it just a simple matter of that? We are not super dependent on Russia. That's why we can do that.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, in my view, this question of the interests of a state in relation to whatever situation, whatever potential target of sanctions, that has to be factored into the calculation as well. No question about it. And I mean, we kill ourselves if we don't think in that way as well. I mean, the reality is,
why don't the government just come out and say that we can't sanction Israel because we have more interest, whereas Russia, we did it because I guess the problem for the government, I guess the problem for the government is they couch the Russian sanctions as part of international law and so on. So I see themselves having painted themselves into a corner because Singaporeans are going to ask, why not this? Instead of if they just said, this is about interest, purely about interest, and that's it. That's our ultimate barometer for any action we take.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the easy answer is you have to ask them. I won't be able to answer on their part. But the fact of the matter is that interest is a very important calculation. All states will have to factor in interest in their foreign policy, right? I mean, international law, yes, and international law does overlap with interest. Morality, to some extent, does overlap with interest as well. But at the end of the day, you have to factor that into your calculation. And I will be worried if states don't do that.
Of course, yeah. So Megan asked, what do you propose is the best way to educate about the genocide? Because you said that should be the priority, right?
Yeah.
Or one of the main things we can do. How do we do that?
No, I think well, through the education system, obviously, yeah. I think one thing, and again, I don't mean to belittle what's happening there, but and I say this very carefully, as a people, as a society, there are some opportunities for us. Like it forces us to think about, well, at one level it forces us to think about things like international law, genocide, all that we, until this happened, honestly, I don't think average Singaporeans really knew or cared too much about it, right? Suddenly now it becomes an issue.
Yep.
Yeah. So we know it's important, but we don't quite know what it is about. Yeah. So under what statutes of international law is genocide covered? What do we mean legally by genocide and all that? And so I think a lot of well-informed, or Singaporeans who want to be well-informed, they've done their own research and all that. But it's an opportunity for us as a society to up our game in terms of understanding some of the realities of the world we live in, yeah, beyond just AI algorithms and things like that. Yeah.
Right.
So that's one level. Second, I think I mean, it does pose a challenge for us as a society, right? And our leaders, our political leaders, have spoken about their concern that something like this happening some distance away will have an impact, a negative impact on harmony and our society and all that. Yeah. I certainly would like to think that Singaporeans are more mature in terms of how we can handle a healthy discussion and
Right.
debate and differences on this issue without it undermining. Yeah. So now, in that sense, it's an opportunity for Singapore society to show indeed, that it can manage differences, yeah, and not require the state to manage the differences for us. Yeah, I think that's a mark of that's one of the marks of a mature society, and yeah, I think this is something that is important to bear in mind. I see one Singaporeans are not mature at all
She's the
to have
one who
such
asked the
discussions.
question. Yeah.
Yeah,
She was
I
our
mean,
student, by the way. Yeah.
I mean, I hope that's not the case, but I certainly see where that person is coming from. I mean, if we see some of the comments on social media, you like, oh dear,
Right, right. So there are some other questions that I'll get to later on. So thank you for that, Prof. So the government, I feel that there are a lot of contradictions in what the ministerial statement said, right? And I'll explain what I think the contradictions are. But I think at the heart of it, the contradictions come from the reluctance to say, look here, all of our foreign policy decisions are based on our interest and nothing else, not about principles and so on. I mean, the principles are inbuilt in the interest, basically, right? So one of the contradictions I found was that Palestine recognizing Israel is a precondition for us recognizing Palestine. But Netanyahu has said that he doesn't recognize Palestine. He doesn't want a Palestinian state. He has said that. So does that mean we should cut off ties? Because that's a precondition for recognizing Palestine. But does the shoe fit on the other foot as well?
I think not necessarily so by that logic, because that is the current status quo. Yeah. Whether we can debate whether that is right or wrong, right? But the fact is that is the current status quo. So by that logic, no, I don't think it is equivalent. But having said that, I think so. When you talk about recognition, essentially what the vast majority of the international community wants to see is essentially a two-state solution,
Yeah.
right? And I think that, and here is where it gets into another sort of area of discussion, which is really domestic politics in general. Yeah, and I think this is something that we, I mentioned earlier about educating ourselves about the context and all that. We need to realize that the Netanyahu government, what it is doing in Gaza is really a topic of very substantial debate, very heated debate in the country, in Israel itself. Yeah. And it's going to heat up because there are going to be elections in Israel next year. Yeah. I think those of your listeners who follow politics there, you know that the current coalition is really wafer thin. Yeah. It's I think one seat, or something to the effect of 1-2 seats in a 120 seat parliament. Yeah. So we want to be careful to draw the conclusion from what we hear from the Prime Minister of the current Prime Minister of Israel. We want to be careful to draw the conclusion that therefore Israel has totally shut off. What I will say is that the appetite in the Israeli population today for a two-state solution is quite low. Yeah, that is true. It's quite low. One of the reasons why it's quite low is because they had to go through that experience of 7 October. Yeah, and in a society where the concern for security, I mean, some people debate that Israel had become complacent and all that, but that's a separate discussion. Security of Israel in relation to Israel's place in the region and its relationships with its neighbors have always been a concern for the country and for their leaders, whichever party, whichever side of the ideological spectrum. So the impact of 7th October, the attacks on 7th October, in shaping and reshaping how Israelis think about the future of their relationship with Palestine, I think that is another point that we should not forget. I mean, what Hamas did on 7th October, which I think was out of desperation from the Hamas perspective, because the tide of history was really sort of flowing the other direction from what they wanted, right? With the Abraham, I mean, can you imagine? People talked about the possibility of Saudi Arabia signing the Abrahamic Accords with Israel. Yeah, I think the Hamas was desperate, reached a point of desperation, and that was a move, and that move triggered that overreaction from Israel. I mean, Israel played into Hamas books, in other words.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about that, since you mentioned, before I get to the point of Netanyahu not wanting Palestine to exist. You mentioned in your article that, I'm quoting, let's be clear, it was Hamas that triggered the latest round of violence in Gaza.
Yeah.
Why do you start the clock on 7 October? Why didn't you start it on 6 October, for instance?
No, I said the latest round.
Yeah,
the latest round. The latest round. My point is, I know there's okay. So I obviously don't subscribe to the fact that history started on 7 October. But I wrote it that way because I think that the impact of that attack, number one, the impact of that attack on the Israeli national psyche was very sharp and very deep. Yeah. Number two, the impact of I mean, if we look at what has happened in the region since then, a lot of it can be traced to 7th October. Okay, what am I referring to? What Israel has done in its neighborhood in order to assert its dominance, or rather, reassert its dominance in regional affairs. A lot of it is tied back to the reality that we dropped the ball on 7 October. Never again are we going to allow that to happen. And we're going to seize whatever opportunity we have to make sure that we re-establish deterrence in our relationship with the neighborhood. Yeah, so
Right.
that was a very important aspect of the entire discussion as well.
Okay, so you were not suggesting that 7 October was the day that all of this began, basically, right?
No lah, no,
Right.
no,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
no.
yeah.
Of course.
Okay.
That's why I said
So,
the latest,
right, right. Okay,
you
got
know.
it. So, because in September 2023, I think there was an important event that a lot of people have glossed over, which is Netanyahu went to the UN General Assembly, took out the map of the Middle East that didn't
Yeah,
include Palestine.
yeah,
And I hear people saying, "Oh, Hamas wants to wipe Israel off the map." I hear this all the time. Even though in the 2017 charter of Hamas, basically there's a tacit recognition of the two-state solution, right? But Netanyahu actually did wipe Palestine off the map, right? So my question is this, right? If I were Palestinian, right, I'm thinking, what is my option now? If I recognize Israel and give up arms, I'm still being occupied in the West Bank. If I demonstrate peacefully the great March of Return in Gaza, I get shot, right? If I go to United Nations, I get vetoed, right? And then now people cannot even recognize me. So what would my
yeah,
option be, right?
yeah. No, I think that's a very valid point. I think this is the I mean, this is the frustration of the situation. I mean, if one dares to be objective about it, yeah, and look at it from both sides. I mean, both parties make, you know, their iteration of a similar argument or logic, right? Neither party wants the other to exist, basically. Yeah. Unfortunately, we are talking about the fringes, right? Whether it's in Palestine with Hamas or Israel with the far right parties. By the way, a second point I wanted to make about how the recent, I mean, the 7 October thing triggered this cascading effect. One of the cascading effects is basically the Israeli far right, yeah, who feel emboldened and empowered by what has happened, right? Because the scenarios that they always had about the vulnerability and the risk, which is tied to their desire to dominate that region, came true, or at least that's how they cast it, right? So that's why now, while we're all preoccupied with Gaza, there's a lot going on in the West Bank as well.
Yep,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
As you know, yeah, and a lot of it is being driven by the far right parties, yeah, and the far right parties are minority parties in the coalition. But when you have a situation where your majority is wavered thin, every seat lah, right? Every seat counts, every vote counts. So you have the far right in Israel, and you have the far right in Palestine, and they are starting to dominate the discourse. Yeah, I think that is the fundamental problem. I mean, how to get out of it? That's the frustration. I mean,
Right. So Sarah mentioned, and I have a question to follow up on this. That I don't know both sides in occupation. One has power, holds more power. Why are you making it seem like it's an equal situation for both sides? Because just now you said neither party wants to recognize each other, but the Palestinian Authority has recognized Israel, but they haven't gotten the reciprocity, I think. But also, uh, Hamas doesn't recognize Israel in its current form, at least. And the international community shuns Hamas, right? But Netanyahu can say all sorts of things, all sorts of lies, and yet we treat him like a good faith actor. And one side has nuclear weapons, one side has violated so many international laws, has invaded so many countries, but the other side is not equivalent at all, right? When we say this both sides thing.
yeah, I mean, if you're talking about a power disparity between Palestine and Israel, I mean, that's obvious lah, right? There's no way of arguing otherwise. Yeah. I don't think that. I mean, I don't think that Israel. I don't think that Netanyahu is sort of getting off scot free. You know, yes, no one's sort of put him in jail, although you know that there have been some rulings against him, right?
Yeah.
And I mentioned earlier again that the situation domestically in Israel, it's certainly not a case where it's a very coherent view about what's happening in Gaza or an Israeli policy in Gaza. It's anything but coherent about that. I mean, and Netanyahu is being attacked. If you look at the Israeli press, it comes across very clearly. Netanyahu is being attacked. So if we talk about sort of the different vectors of power here, yes, there's Palestine, there's Israel, and there's a disparity there. But there's also the question of within the Palestinian political constellation, within the political constellation in Israel. That middle ground, which is unfortunately reduced as events have transpired. I mean, that middle ground really has to start to expand. Yeah, I mean, that's how that's done. That's another thing, but I think that's quite important. That's quite important.
So on the 8th of October 2023, you mentioned the Israeli press, and the Israeli press, I have to say, I mean, it is quite a free press. We have Haaretz, the Times of Israel, that
Yeah.
pretty critical of Netanyahu, I think, consistently also. The Times of Israel on 8th October wrote an article which claimed that Netanyahu had propped up Hamas for the longest time. So if Hamas is a terrorist group and there is a prime minister that actively props up a terrorist group, then shouldn't that prime minister and the government be considered terrorist groups or terrorist organizations as well? Because you are trying to prop up, in your eyes, who is a monster in your eyes. So you're trying to prop them up, but aren't you part of the problem as well?
I don't know the details of that argument. So I will reserve judgment on that, whether indeed Israel or Netanyahu, CIA, Mossad, or whoever was responsible for the creation of Hamas and all that. Yeah. I think we setting that aside. I think it's not a question of propping up Hamas. I mean, Hamas is there, it's very clear to me. Hamas is very clear about what it wants. Yeah, just as the Israeli far right are very clear about what they want. Yeah, and we shouldn't lose sight either of the extremes and what they have identified very clearly as the objectives. We shouldn't lose sight of that. Yeah, I mean, who prop up who is keeping who going and all that. I would rather not sort of wade into that kind of speculation.
Okay, so the point is that Netanyahu is not. Would you agree that he's not a good faith actor in this, or the government, this current iteration of the government?
I think that Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to the situation in Gaza and the overreaction, the massive overreaction of the IDF in Gaza is going to be linked. Is linked. Yeah, is linked to the Prime Minister. Is very clear. Even the latest offensive was done. It was a political decision. It was a military decision.
Yep.
Right? IDF did not want to. They had a whole list of reasons why it's not a good idea to do it. But the political leadership wanted it done. And who's the political leadership? It is Prime Minister Netanyahu. Yeah, and you yourself have said, and he's been on the record very clear in his views, right? Forget about the two-state solution. No Palestine, no future Palestine, all that. So he's come out and made his views very clear about this.
So do you think we are imposing an impossible condition on the Palestinians? they are supposed to recognize a government and entity that doesn't want them to exist?
Okay, so what needs to happen first, I think, is the Hamas element in the equation has to be removed. Yeah.
Is that first, or do you think the Netanyahu government needs to be removed, or both at the same time, or do you think one is a precondition to the other?
The Netanyahu government, there's a democratic process, and there'll be elections next year. Yeah, so that will be a decision. I mean, the Israeli people make a decision on that.
But why can't the Palestinians choose if that's the case? If Israelis get to choose, why can't Palestinians choose?
Well, is that okay? So if you want to talk about elections, then you get into the PA as well and Fatah, right? And them not having elections.
Yeah. Both of them, right? Both of them have suspended.
So, and of course, this is historical, but don't forget the Palestinian people chose Hamas, right?
Yep.
we all know that. Of course, it's questionable. We cannot assume that because they chose Hamas in 2006, they're going to choose Hamas again today, right? The fact of the matter is there's no mechanism for choice. If they can find some way to have a mechanism for choice, then that's great. Yeah, because I've looked at some surveys. I mean, I don't know how. Well, maybe you know better about how accurate these surveys are in Gaza, right? It's very hard to imagine being able to do proper rigorous surveys in Gaza today. Yeah, but those that apparently have been done, the indications, they don't ask whether you support Hamas, but on questions on whether Hamas should disarm and disband, the vast majority, I think 60 over or 70 over% say no, right? I don't know whether it's out of fear or out of a sense that even if Hamas disbands, Israel is not going to keep to his side of the bargain, right? I think the mistrust is so deep that I can imagine both sides thinking that way. Yeah, but the reality is there's no mechanism to determine what the people of Palestinian want. And that's another unfortunate story, and that leads, like I mentioned earlier, to the issue of the Palestinian Authority and its legitimacy in the eyes of the Palestinian people as well. Yeah, which is not great, as we all know.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so I wanted to go back just now, Prof. When you said the government saying that us recognizing Palestine is contingent on Palestine recognizing Israel. Of course, PA has already done that, but Hamas has not. It's only a tacit acceptance of the two-state solution, and it also seems like it's temporary. It's not a permanent thing. At least from my reading of the constitution, I don't know whether you agree with me. But Netanyahu says that he doesn't want Palestine to exist, and your point is, since we've already recognized Israel, so the situation is different, and I agree with that. But then, is there things that we can do to at least force the hand of the current government, or at least in our small part, right? Because our government said in that ministerial statement by Foreign Minister Vivian Balakrishnan, he said that we are going to sanction right-wing settlers, right? But I'm thinking the heads of the right-wing settlers are the ones in the cabinet, right? Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, or even Netanyahu himself, right? Some of the rhetoric that they spout, if they were in Singapore, they'll be arrested under the ISA, and I'm not even exaggerating, right? As in, so would sanction on the settlers mean that we have to sanction the government themselves, or at least members of the government, for us to have consistency?
Yeah, I mean, I think the situation is evolving. Yeah, in the sense that the latest ministerial statement reflects the point of view of the government now, and in the context of a situation that obviously has changed over the last 2 years, right? And moving forward, I think I can't remember the exact wording, yeah, but I think the minister also made it clear that going forward, a lot is going to depend on the situation, and in particular on Israel as well. What they do, yeah, and which means that there, depending on the situation, there might be other. There'll be revisions to the position, our position. So as far as sanctions is concerned, as I mentioned earlier, and I would like to think, and I hope that the Singapore government takes this seriously also. Sanctions, yeah, the using the tool of sanctions, not something to be taken lightly, imposed very carefully. And in that context, the fact that we have, and this is a change, right? That now we say that we are going to sanction settlers in the West Bank. I think that is a major shift, acknowledging the evolving situation already on our part. So it could well be that those sanctions may expand if the situation gets worse on the part of Israel. I hope not. I mean, now we have this Trump, I don't know, 20, 21 point, I don't know how many points planned, right? So we wait and see. I mean, people keep saying that if anyone can change the situation is Mr. Trump. So
I do agree with that, actually. I think if there's somebody who can change, it's him, right?
No,
But
it's
they
true.
change,
It's true.
But change for the better or for worse, but he's the one who can change for sure.
But even then, I think, I mean, it may or may not be so straightforward as Trump say jump, Netanyahu say how.
Of course, definitely. So there is one part of the article, the commentary, that when I read it, I felt a bit uneasy, and I wanted to hopefully raise it with you. You mentioned, well, the totemic slogan "From the river to the sea" commands currency in Palestinian nationalist circles. It fails to acknowledge the legitimate rights of Israel and hence is a non-starter. Well, why I felt a bit uneasy is for two reasons. One is I've been to some of these Palestinian demonstrations in London, and everybody chants it, and no one means that they want to wipe Israel off the map. Maybe some do, but no one I spoke to. So they either mean a one-state solution where everybody has the same rights, or they mean a two-state solution, but that is a chant that reflects their aspirations. But the other reason is, it is in the Likud party's original charter, the original party platform, that said that from the river Jordan to the Mediterranean Sea, there shall only be Israeli sovereignty. Don't you think that is more consequential, that kind of, from people actually who have power, who are actively trying to prevent a Palestinian state, rather than some activists shouting it? Because I feel that I've had so many conversations with people, and they always bring this up, from the river to the sea. And whenever I say, oh, Netanyahu's party was going to say that, and they almost never know that actually this is Netanyahu. I would think that it's far more consequential if somebody who's in power and actually who's actively doing it, shouldn't we take that more seriously than some activists chanting it?
So I mean, you know this history better than I do, Before there was Israel from river to the sea, right? Israel, 1948 Israel. That area was Palestine. So from river to the sea was Palestine without Israel. Israel didn't exist as a territorial entity at that time. Some Palestinian nationalists, not all, because I mean, that different shades. But that's why I don't know whether I qualified it. Maybe I should have. Some in some Palestinian narratives, river to the sea basically implies a return to the pre-Israel Palestine. And that, I mean, that was the issue that was on my mind. And that is the issue of concern of a lot of Israelis. That's how you end up drawing the connection, rightly or wrongly, drawing the connection, the idea of river to the sea, from a Palestinian perspective to the existence or non-existence of Israel, right? Because it's not a slogan that was grasped out of thin air. Underlying that slogan was a history. Yeah. So I think that is very different. That is different from the. I have to admit I don't know exactly the wording of the Likud Party's statement. Yeah, but I think that the implications are a bit different, because one talks about a territory before before Israel came into existence, which implies what? Which implies the non-existence of Israel, right? Whereas the other, the Likud party may talk about Israel being the land from the river to the river to the sea, basically, yeah. As a reaction to what the Palestinian slogan articulated.
But why do we see it as a reaction though? If the exact phrasing is the right of the Jewish people to the land of Israel is eternal and indisputable.
Yeah.
Therefore, Judea and Samaria. So this even in this particular wording shall not be
Now
handed to.
that's a different thing. Judea and Samaria, that's another issue of debate. But the right of Israelis to a land that's eternal. I mean, as a Singaporean, I would say my right to a Singaporean land that is eternal, right? I'm sure you say that too. If you're from Mozambique, you will say that. If you're from
no issue with that. No issue with that.
Yeah.
No issue with that. Indisputable. So between the sea and the Jordan, there will only be Israeli sovereignty. Isn't that a genocidal call? If the other way is a genocidal call, wouldn't this
I
be?
don't. It's a problem geopolitically for reasons we've been discussing. I would caution against jumping from that to genocide. I mean, it's a big cognitive leap, from that to genocide. You could negotiate your way to that land one, right? It doesn't imply that I'm going to wipe out, by
So similarly,
use of
for
force,
the chance
everyone
for
there.
river to the sea could be that as well, right? So it
Yeah,
goes both ways. Right? Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So there are a few questions, Prof. Maybe the first one, religious nationalism in Israel. Do you think that is a huge part of it? And
Yes.
I think you were downplaying your own experience on this. You have been there. You've talked to so many people. You've analyzed this for a while. So Fireplace video said how that may factor into our international response, given our own stance on religious nationalism, which is no in Singapore, right?
Yeah.
So is that what represents? Because even Netanyahu was quoting Amalek and the Bible. Clearly, there is an audience, it seems, right?
Yeah. Oh, no. Religious nationalism, Zionism, is a very strong force. There's secular nationalism as well, right? But here, your listener is specifically interested in religious nationalism. It is a strong force. So you have in the coalition, you have a couple of orthodox. That's the old British ultra-orthodox Jewish parties, the Haredi parties. But you also have the religious nationalist, the Zionist parties, right? And this is, Smotrich, Itamar, Ben-Gvir's parties, right? They are, so this is the, this is the, in a sense, this is democracy for you, right? You have a coalition government. You have these two parties who are numerically, they are not the majority. They are minorities in a coalition, which has a paper-thin majority, and they have threatened to pull out of the coalition, which will of course cause the collapse of the government. Yeah, and they have used this opportunity to press their party agenda, which until they got into the government was, somewhat marginal in the Israeli political discourse. Yeah. So the religious nationalists have always been there, but we want to be careful to assume that they have always been the dominant force in Israeli politics. That's not the case, and even now numerically they're not the dominant force, but because of this unfortunate configuration of politics, they I mean, who's the one pushing for the total occupation of the West Bank? It's the religious Zionists. Who's the one who are pushing for the occupation, not just the invasion, but occupation of Gaza? It's also them. Yeah, so they are certainly a factor. They are certainly a factor in Israeli politics, but they're not the only ones, and they're not the dominant voice numerically. But like I said, because of the nature of the politics, it has ended up like this. So the elections next year will be very interesting. But I do hope that we see changes for the better before then. We don't want to wait until October,
Right.
1 year's time.
So there's a question. I'm mindful of time. We only have a couple more minutes. So thoughts from both profs on the latest ceasefire proposal. Why should Hamas accept the proposal? And I fear that this is another proposal that Israel will use later on. Oh, Palestinians rejected our proposals. Well, if the proposals were bad, then of course they should be rejected, right? This one, there's no recognition or moving towards any state. No, it's only vague commitments to withdraw, right? This seems more like a surrender than a ceasefire. For me, the only reason the Palestine or Hamas would accept this would be out of desperation, and there is no other reason, because I don't think it's a good faith proposal. But what do you think about it?
I mean, my own view is again, I mean, this is flogging a dead horse, but it's really an unfortunate situation because there's no trust. So Hamas and Palestinians do not trust, as you alluded to, this Israeli government in terms of any assurances or commitment or promises for withdrawal. Yeah. And the Israelis, many Israelis do not trust the Palestinian side that, they are all on board on getting rid of Hamas. Yeah, the people who perpetrated those attacks. The international community, of course, have spoken out almost in one voice about Hamas. I'm not sure. I never did a count, but certainly a lot of the Arab Muslim states who were quieter earlier on, they signed up to the New York Declaration, which, to my mind, commits them to this stand that Hamas should have no place in the future configuration. But that's the rest of the world, Palestinians. Back to your earlier point, how do we ascertain how Palestinians feel about the situation? We know of protests against Hamas, but we also know of sympathies for Hamas. So, yeah.
It's difficult. Although my own suspicion is Hamas is more popular outside Gaza than in Gaza right now.
Yeah,
right now. But
that's
your suspicion as well. Yeah. That's. But again, it's impossible to ascertain, right? So, Prof, maybe we'll just end off. Okay, end off on this first. Then I have a slightly different type of question. So, for the Palestinians, right? Why should they trust anything? Why should they trust even the Arab states? Why should they trust the Israelis? Because in West Bank they've given up arms, but nothing has happened. So they feel that giving up arms here is just the final. It's almost like this is a final reason for them. Israel comes in and then in Netanyahu's words, finish the job. What is the reason? And I think they would be fully justified thinking that, right?
Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah. I mean, from Balfour, or even before that, the Palestinians have been hoodwinked, including by Arab states.
Absolutely.
After 1948.
Absolutely.
Right? And so I absolutely understand why it would be very difficult for them to trust. But at the same time, what are the reality also? What are the options now? They need the support of the international community. So whatever baggage you have, or whatever suspicions you have of the Arab countries, the reality is the day after, hopefully it comes sooner rather than later, the reconstruction of the country, you're going to need them. They have to up their game. So maybe in a sense, give them is a chance for them to make up or whatever it is, lah. But that's the reality. So on one hand, you may be suspicious of the international community, but on the other hand, you're going to need the international community because you want to be part of the international community.
Right, absolutely. Thank you so much, Prof. Just a final question, right? Because you are weighing in, but of course you are the chairman of the Middle East Institute, but you're weighing in on this issue, right, quite publicly as an academic, right? What do you see the role of a Singaporean academic, or do you see that the quintessential Singaporean academic should be a public intellectual and weigh in on these important issues of our time?
Quintessential Singaporean academic should get tenure.
Wherever.
Jokes aside, no, I mean some do, some don't, lah, right? I think those who are prepared to, in an informed, constructive manner, I think they should. I certainly think they should. But like I said, I mean you talk about academics. I think academics. I know academics who don't want to just want to stay in the library or the lab or whatever, do their work. That's fine too. Yeah. But for those of us who research and do work, scholarly, rigorous, thoughtful work on this, that, and the other issue that is of interest, of public interest, I don't see any reason why they should not contribute to the discussion. But like I said, I mean, it is, I think professionally also is incumbent for us to contribute in a civil, constructive way. Yeah.
Absolutely. On that note, thank you so much, Professor Joseph Liow. It was
thank you.
a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, a pleasure.
And by the way, is this your first day?
Yes.
First day at work as Dean of LKY School. So
no. For the record, I'm not the Dean of LKY School. I'm only a faculty. So please don't joke. You already tekan me so teruk already. Now you want to joke some more.
Sorry, okay. At LKY School. Sorry. Okay, bye-bye, bro. Okay. See you.
Okay, bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.